So we are going to discuss about the most fun specs in the War Within concerning Soloq Rbg. This is a tier list, so obviously it is tied to my opinion, especially since it is about fun. My fun is not your fun, but maybe with my opinions about the specs, you might maybe play a different spec going into the War Within. Now, I'm gonna give you a disclaimer. I don't take current balancing as something that is going to be current live gameplay in the War Within, because there is still a lot of balancing. I do feel like design wise it's pretty much set in stone right now, except maybe a handful of spec that still needs a bit of like a design choice from the devs. But right now I do feel like what we have is what we are going to get going to the War Within, except for the balancing. But overall, Soloq Rbg is going to be a new rated bracket for us. And having played a lot of Battleground Blitz and Battleground Blitz on both the beta, whenever we had like the play with the blues, but also a lot of like the gameplay that I would have from Dragonflight. I do have like an idea on what specs are going to be fun going into the War Within. Hopefully you do watch the whole video so you do understand my choices, and hopefully you do feel that it is a interesting tier list, because not a lot of people talk about the fun of a certain spec, which I find the most important aspect of a spec, not really the balancing, because balancing is going to be up and down anyways. Let's explain the tier list a bit. S tier means that it is the most fun you could have in Soloq Rbgs, and then you have also the most amount of how can I say, you have about a lot of agency. Yeah, I think agency is a good word. That you have a lot of like sway you can have into the Soloq Rbgs. Some specs are like unfortunately not really high impact. It has nothing to do with balancing, just has to do with the kit and how it plays. But some specs are like very high value, and those specs are also fun to play in my opinion. A tier means that it is still very fun, but it has some like problems. B tier means that it is average to okay tier. You can have fun, but obviously you have some limits, and those limits are very clear compared to the A ones. C tier means that it is it has more times that you're going to probably doom the spec, and sometimes you're going to love it, but it's very rare. And D tier means that you're going to have like zero fun into Soloq Rbgs, or at least my opinion would be that it has zero fun. The tanks are not listed because I feel like tanks are very niche, and obviously if you're like a protection warrior and you're playing versus a garden druid, most likely you're going to be in a disadvantage regardless. Has nothing to do with balancing, has everything to do with design of the spec. And I think playing with a huge disadvantage is also not very fun. But let's talk class per class. I'm going to talk about warlocks first. I think affliction warlock is going to be very cool in the War Within. They have like multiple specs going on, multiple builds going on. The hero taunts are like fantastic in my opinion from what I've tested. I do feel like it has a lot of like good things going, but does it have a lot of high impact? I don't think like design wise it has a lot of high impact, or like not the most impact in the game. But being a caster like Affliction Warlock, you're going to be able to sustain yourself very well, because there is no dampening. Your health stones are going to be incredible healing, especially with how we have it on the current beta. Of course it can be balanced down, but I do feel like it's a design choice, so it's not going to be drastically low. But overall I think 1v1s are doing some good stuff. You could do 1v2s, you have good CC, you have the abilities to cap and to hold a node. So for me it's going to be an A tier spec, high value. I think you're going to have a lot of fun going into the War Within because of the rework they got on the spec tier, spec talents, and also the class talents, which are very cool. A spec which I think is going to be a lot more fun is going to be Destruction Warlock. I think Destruction Warlock, design-wise, is a high-value caster into the War Within for Soloq RBGs. It is very fun, has a lot of control, has a lot of instant damage, has a lot of casted damage as well. So you have times where you're going to be free casting, and those times are going to be feeling good. Obviously, balancing-wise, it is not there. I think Chaos Balls really hits for like lower than lava burst amounts, which even then it's really low, so they need to get balanced. So don't take this as a meta tier list, because I think if I had to do it right now, Destruction Warlock will be around B tier because of the damage that they do. But I do feel like they're going to fix it pretty quickly, because Destruction Warlocks notoriously has and needs to have Chaos Bolts being meaningful, at least since Mist of Pandaria. I think Cataclysm, the damage is really low for Chaos Bolts, from what I've played, because I do play Warlock on Cataclysm. But I think once it's fixed, the damage is fixed, I think you're going to have incredible fun. And it has nothing to do with like purely being OP or not. I think it's just like a high value caster. It always has been, even in team RBGs. Whenever you're going to do your comp, you most likely are going to run a Warlock with it, with a balanced druid, for example. Demonology Warlock with the reworks that it got and also the hero tons, I do feel like it has some potential. In general, I don't value too much pets like specs, because obviously with the AoE damage going on, and your pet is going to get rooted out of nothing because of multiple specs. I do feel like sometimes it is in a disadvantage, but the hero tons are very good. It does give you also a lot of like flavor, and I do feel like currently the builds are like more oriented with casting, which is not really a problem. Like sometimes it is a problem, but I don't think in a Soloq RBGs it is a problem to be able to cast. You have insane amount of CC, you have a stun, you even have a double stun, you have even a triple stun if you want to, you have a fear, you have coil, you have your TPs, you have your portals. To be fair, I think it's going to be on the same level as Affliction Warlock. Like really, it's going to be on the same level. I do feel like you're going to have a lot of fun. I think Warlock in general is going to be a fantastic class if you're going for Soloq RBGs, because of how Warlocks always played in BGs. And I never really disliked a moment whenever I was playing Warlock in BGs or in team RBGs, and even more in Battleground Blitz. I do feel like I have a lot of impact. Again, balancing still needs to happen, but I think design-wise it is a very good choice if you're going into the War Within. Let's talk about Mage. Mage has always been a notoriously low impact spec in RBGs, like in team RBGs, because it was never really taken. You will always prefer a balanced druid, a hunter even, or a warlock to fill the mage spot. But I do feel like with Soloq RBGs you have a lot of outplay potential. I do feel like outplay potential is something that people want sometimes in Soloq RBGs, being able to do a 1v1, a cool trick, being able to like ice wall the flag so you could capture it. If you can look multiple videos from multiple YouTubers doing cool stuff, which you can do that as well. Now the barrier to entry of 2 mage is a bit like higher than, let's say, warlocks, but you have also way more mobility. Your damage is not that bad actually. You can really 1v1 correctly. I think the negatives that you had in team RBGs are really dampened in Soloq RBGs, where smaller skirmishes still happen and can happen. And I do feel like arcane mages are going to do pretty well, for example. Is it a high impact spec? I don't think so, because it has like a lot of stuff that you can stop, and it's mostly arcane damage, which is easily stopped by interrupting or even like mini CC, micro CC. So obviously I'm going to put it a bit lower than affliction or demonology Warlock, because you have cleansing problems. But I do feel like you can have pretty cool moments which can give you some ideas to go for mage specs. But if I talk about like better specs, for example, I think Fire Mage is an incredible spec going to do the War Within. I think the design is very well made. You have a lot of AoE builds, which obviously balance needs still to happen, but even if balancing is going to happen, I think the AoE builds are going to be very, very useful in depending on maps. And on maps where you have like 1v1 skirmishes, you can easily go for more of a like a huge combust build where you're going to do a lot of pyroblast and try to win games because of that. And then you have Frost Mage, which I think is going to be incredibly annoying to face in the War Within. I think Frost Mages in 1v1s are like really, really strong. It's very hard to win versus a Frost Mage in 1v1s. Even 1v2s with the amount of slows you get, with the control they got, and the possibility to like draw fights and be really, really annoying to like having a killing blow on him. You can really defend a node very well, and you can also play team fights perfectly. I do feel like the value of Frost Mages has been very much increased going into team like the War Within, especially in Soloq RPGs. I think in Soloq RPGs you're going to have a lot of fun, and I would recommend to play Mage if you are like really on the fence, because you play team RPGs like the normal RPGs that you've known since ages, and you will like remember the times where mages were useless in those settings. I do feel like right now is the time to try it back and to play some Battleground Blitz on Dragonflight, or even whenever the preseason is going to be up, you can try mages and you're going to have a lot of fun with it, guaranteed. Now let's talk about warriors. I think warrior is interesting because Arms and Fury now have both Bladestorm. Arms had it, but Fury got it returned. They had it in Shadowlands. Now in Dragonflight it was gone, and now they got it back in the War Within. That helps them for a lot of stuff going into like Soloq RPGs and the maps going on. You have mobility, you have incredible damage normally, you have like a good MS effect, which is very important in those settings. I do feel like your value and your impact is like very high on certain maps and very low on others. Obviously, in 1v1s, you're not the best spec out there. You can do very well. You have some sustain now. They buffed it, or at least the design of it wants it to be buffed. But I think personally, I cannot put them at S tier because of like the glancing problems that are like 1v1s and being able to CC correctly. You only have like only a few reliable CCs, which again, you're using it on the kill target and not often to be able to cap. Since the cap time is 4 seconds, you want to have at least a 5-second stun, for example, to be able to reliably cap, or a fear or whatever. And I feel like Arms Warrior, same for Fury, doesn't have like that kit to be able to deal with stuff. Fury Warrior, I'm going to say that it is going to be also A tier since they got Bladestorm. The builds that it can play are very fun as well. I think Arms and Fury, because again, I don't want to deter about balancing. I should not talk about balancing, but I think the hero talents combined with the spec rework and the class rework are very neat. I do feel like some talents are more fun than others. But at the end, it depends on the player, on what talents they want to play. But I do feel like they have a lot of choices, a lot of neat things going on. You're going to play like a BG hero sometimes, where you have your healer behind you and you're going to be sustaining a lot of damage and a lot of health from your healer, and you're going to have a lot of fun playing those classes and spec combinations. So I personally cannot wait to test warriors in Soloq RPGs, like in a real rated environment. And I feel like those, like that spec is really highly dependent on like the comp and the team. If the team is doing well, you're going to have an insane amount of time and you're going to have a lot of fun. If your team is playing very badly and very like unfortunately chaotic, which can happen, you're going to have a lot less impact than those S tier specs. If I'm going to talk about Rogue, I may as well talk about one of the most precious specs in the game. I think stealth is such a strong thing going into Soloq RPGs. The only problem I see sometimes it is that you can have multiple rogues into one group, Imagine if you have like 3 rogues in your team, you know you're going to be doomed because of that. But if you only have like 1 rogue, which can happen and which should, to be honest, happen, then you're going to have a great time, because a rogue can really like cap nodes that you're not able to be able to cap at like normal times, right? They have blind, they have sap, they have stuns, they have the possibility to just delete someone in 1v1s normally if the balancing is correct. They have multiple vanishes, they have multiple ways to get away and do a lot of stuff. But if I'm going to talk about like spec specific, I think Assassination Rogue is going to be a good A tier spec, but really the top A tier. And just because I think Subtlety Rogue will be the S tier one, like in design wise and how it's going to play in the War Within. I think Subtlety Rogue is one of the most fun specs of there. Very high like maintenance. You have to play it, you have to become better, you have to understand the combos you have. But I think being able to stuff, having 2 vanishes, having the possibilities to turn the tides into your favor is something you cannot always do as an Assassination Rogue. You have clear weaknesses, for example, not having double vanish, and being able to also die very fast compared to a Subtlety Rogue. But I would say burst wise, Assassination Rogues have a more consistent burst, because once he hits the death mark, and once he knows, look, you're going to get destroyed by my macro that I've played, and it's going to be pretty good at executing it. I do feel like Assassination Rogue is going to be more fun than Subtlety Rogue, and that's why I'm going to put it higher than Subtlety Rogue. In normal times, I would put it Subtlety Rogue higher than Assassination Rogue because of the utility, the balancing, the design. But right now, I do feel like Assassination Rogue is a better made spec compared to Subtlety Rogue. I think Subtlety Rogues, they really lack in their design a possibility to deal very good consistent damage. I like the burst, I like being able to burst, but I don't really like to always have to run or to reset to be able to do a big go. And again, in Soloq Rbgs, it can happen that if you're doing a team fight or whatever, or your friend is coming, he ruins the R's for you, and you're not able to do what you want to do to be able to succeed on killing someone, like killing blow someone. So obviously, I think A tier is a good spot for Subtlety Rogue. Now, something I don't like to play, and that's an opinion on mine, of mine. I personally don't really play and like Outlaw Rogue. I don't know why. I do feel like I don't like the gameplay. It's really like a piano. You're always hitting something. I already play Enhancement Shaman, right? So I don't want to have a second spec where I am playing like this. I do feel like you as a player can have fun in the War Within. So I am going to put it in C tier. But I would say fun-wise, it is really low. So it is very biased of me. I think if I put it in a vacuum and I'm telling myself, like, look, is someone going to have fun as an Outlaw Rogue in the War Within, in Soloq Rbgs, being able to have a great kit, being able to have like hero talents that are going to be balanced around, being able to play multiple builds, being able to play like something that is very hard to kill in general, yeah, I think it can be fun. But if I have to compare to the other specs, obviously it will be Assassination Rogue first, Subtlety Rogue second, Outlaw Rogue third, so I would say B tier, and that's it. But since I'm a bit biased and I don't like that spec, I'm going to put it at C tier because it is useful. But the main factor for me for being high tiered on this tier list is like the fun factor. If I'm not having fun in Soloq Rbgs with that spec, I ain't going to play it no matter what. So for me, it's going to be a C tier spec. Now, evokers, I'm going to talk about potential fun. I'm going to say that, again, I could be very biased and say, look, evokers are going to be D tier because I don't like the skins of evokers. Already discussed it multiple times. But I'm going to put myself in shoes that are more acceptable of the race of like evokers and drag tier and whatever. So let's say I am Togre, I love drag tiers, I love the design of drag tiers, I love not being able to see my armor. for example, I think Augmentation Evoker might be very fun because it is a very supporty playstyle, and if you do like to play tanks, if you do like to play healer, you do like to play DPS, I think Augmentation Evoker can be very fun. I think the design is better than the Devastation Evoker. I think balancing wise, it is a nightmare, so it will not be balanced in either direction. So that's still a problem, I think, in the War Within. But I do feel like Augmentation Evoker, the fantasy of being able to help a warrior becoming like a monster is phenomenal. I come from games like Warhammer Online, uh, Age of like Dark Age of Camelot, Aeon, Star Wars: The Old Republic. We have of course World of Warcraft Vanilla. Like playing a support play style spec was always something I liked. That's why I played Druid in Vanilla. That's why I played Rune Priest or like Archmage in Warhammer Online. Whatever I played like SWAT or like Star Wars of the Old Republic. Star Wars the Old Republic. I liked playing tanks because I liked the support feel. Whenever I played Aeon, I like to play like the Aed like Bard. I don't know how it's called in English because I played it in French, which is the one like the cleric with the staff where you're beating some people and you have like chance. I like to play that. So obviously, Augmentation Evoker, the fantasy is very cool. I just feel like balancing wise, it sucks. I think Drag tier is such a bad race, and it's just not fun to not being able to see your armor and you play like a skinny Drake, which is, I don't know, not my thing. But yeah, for people that don't care about the race, maybe you play with Team Morph and it works, whatever. I think Augmentation Evoker can be fun. For that matter, I think Devastation Evoker might be one of the most fun specs in the game, if you can get over the drag tier and whatever, and the limited buttons you have. I would say like Devastation Evoker is what like the comparison with MM Hunter and BM Hunter fused together. I think the damage of a MM Hunter and the liberty and the easiness of a BM Hunter. I think Devastation Evoker is like incredibly strong, has CC, has damage, can just pop you and you're done. I think you can have a lot of fun playing a very mobile caster. You have like the best of both worlds, being able to move like a melee and literally zap someone like a Destruction Warlock. Personally, I like it. I just don't like to play that a race, and that's why probably the only reason why I don't play it. I think if you could actually like have armor and look like a human or an elf or even an orc, I don't care. But like being like a skinny dragon, it's not my type. And then Preservation Evoker, I would say, is also the first healer being S tier. I think it is insane to be able to deal some insane amount of damage, to deal insane amount of AoE healing, being able to be very mobile, being able to rescue people out of the way. You can really be very valuable as well for your flag carrier. I think it's one of the hardest spec to counter on a node because it does damage but also CCs and also heals incredibly well. I think in general Preservation Evoker is really awesome. I just, again, the race, but if I could actually play like a human, I would be playing the like Evokers. I think the playstyle is interesting and like fun because you have multiple schools of spells. The mobility is very cool. And I would recommend highly to play Preservation Evoker. I think it's one of the best specs in the game, like design wise. And yeah, if you liked like healers that can deal damage and can be very valuable, I think that is one of the specs that can do that for you. Now hunters. I'm going to say, and I'm very biased, I love BM hunters, but I do want to say that it is not very high value except in a few parts. The good thing is you are a pet class, so obviously if you get sapped, you can still move your pet into the flag and like decap the node. You can still be very mobile and deal an incredible amount of damage, but your damage is way more consistent than real burst. So it doesn't really work that well in BGs. I do also think that if you want to be very optimal in Soloq RPGs, you would probably not play BM Hunter. I'm still going to put it in B tier because I do see the value of it. I do see the fun factors of it. I do feel like the rework is very well made. I do feel like you have more things to do these days compared to Dragonflight. But I think me putting in B tier is more of a bias towards the BM Hunters than against it. I think if I had to compare it with MM Hunters, it is really leagues above, like below, like design wise, and how it can actually like effectively reach goals. So I'm going to put it B tier. Again, has nothing to do with balancing. I think BM Hunters are going to be fantastic. I think in arenas you're going to have a great time, but I don't think in Soloq RPGs you're going to like love your time every single time. But obviously you have some people are like die-hard BM Hunters, and then it's fine. It's still going to be very good. But yeah, I would say like if you are going Soloq, like in the War Within, you're looking for a new spec, you haven't played BM Hunters yet, I would not really recommend that spec going into Soloq RPGs because you're not going to have incredible fun. And then you have MM Hunters, which are the polar opposite. I do feel like it is incredibly S tier. It always has been S tier in solo play. If you remember random BGs, you still like have nightmares of like MM Hunters like popping you away from 40 yards, even higher whenever they're going for full mastery. I still think they have like a great kit. Their design is really about like the burst and being able to deal with it. I do feel like you're also a pet class, you still play with a pet, so you're going to be very good at defending nodes, at overtaking nodes as well. You have multiple knocks as well. They are not DRing each other, so you can be very annoying with that. You have more defensives as well. I think the rework is a fantastic rework for hunters in general, not really MM, but I do feel like in general the reworks is a success for hunters. I do feel like if you are going to play MM Hunter in the War Within, as in Soloq Rbg, you're going to have a lot of enjoyment. Survival Hunter is going to be also a high enjoyment spec. I am enjoying Survival Hunter on the beta. I am enjoying the playstyle changes. I love that you have more ways to play your spec. I do feel like your freedom as a melee DPS is unparalleled. You have a lot of value as well. I do feel like having camouflage, same for the other hunters specs, is a thing that is underappreciated but very important in most games. Now that's me being a very biasy like tier list maker here, because again, Survival Hunter has been a blast on the beta. Design wise, not only like balancing wise or damage wise, but like purely on how it plays, it feels very good, and I can't actually wait to test it in a real scenario, like it's like rated environment. Priest, I think this priest is also insanely fun. You're going to see that it's very top heavy, because I do feel like most specs are going to be very fun in like Soloq Rbg environment, and there's just like a little amount of specs that are not going to be very fun. But this priest is going to be incredible fun. I think if you want to have a lot of impact, you want to do damage, you want to do healing, you want to be able to change tides of the battle, I think this priest is one of those specs. Now, again, it is very balancing heavy, I would say, dependent, because if you're dealing no damage because balancing is crap, you're not going to have a great time. So maybe just because of that, because of the possibility to not have fun because of balancing, which is not really the most valuable stats on this tier list, but I do feel like it is really not always a safe bet to go Disc Priest. Sometimes it does very well, and sometimes it deals like no damage and needs to be buffed, and it takes ages to do so. But from what I've tested, I do feel like this priest is going to be insanely fun, and also a lot of high impact on those Soloq RPGs. Then you have Holy Priest, which I'm going to put it at B tier because of personal bias. I know. I think Holy Priest is not that fun. I also don't really enjoy too much Holy Priest. I do feel like it has value. I do think it has a lot of impact. That's why it's B tier. But I think it is like Outlaw Rogue, where I am normally never going to play Holy Priest as a choice. Like if you tell me, look, choose a class, and you're going into the war within, what would it be? It will never be priest, because I know it's very high variance. It's going to be either very fun, or it's going to be very, 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 very disadvantageous, I would say, to play like in Soloq Rbg environments. So for me, B tier, I do feel like you can have fun. I do feel like it has impact by times, but it's not the same as Disc Priest, where you have insane amount of like damage reduction, which is very strong whenever there's no dampening as well. So for me, it has a clear difference. And then you have like Shadow Priest, which I think is going to be also very fun. It's going to be A tier, probably top of A tier. It's going to be surprising on how fun it can be as a caster, which you are immobile, but remember the amount of CC it can have. You can really turn fights just because of your CC. And it is more difficult to stop CC as a Soloq in a Soloq Rbg than, let's say, in arenas where you have a lot of like gladiator losa, for example, or like announcers or weak auras telling you what you need to do whenever someone is CC'd. In Soloq Rbgs, that's not going to happen. So you will have to have a lot of like coordination with your team, kind of, but you can do it yourself as well because of the amount of CC you have. But also in general, you have so much impact in those fights that you're going to have a lot of fun because of that. And having tested Shadow Priest on the beta, I did enjoy my time, so I do feel like it's going to be A tier. Now, Elemental Shaman. I've discussed multiple videos about the rework. I think it is a fantastic rework. I know that some people like not liking it. I don't care. If you want to watch my videos, you will understand why I find it fun and where I do debunk a lot of like those myths around Elemental Shaman being bad since the rework, which has nothing to do with balancing. It has to do with how they build their spec. I do feel like Elemental Shaman is going to be incredible fun, but it's going to be A tier. The reason is because it is notorious that you don't have super high impact in Soloq Rbgs as Elemental Shaman, because you are very slow, you are not very mobile, you were never really mobile to begin with. Your CC is casted, your lightning loss is cool, but you're stuck into it as well. So you cannot really like swap a node because of that. Your hex is the only like real CC that you can really stop someone, but it can just get trinketed very quickly, or even dispelled by someone that has a decurse. I do feel like the rework is going to be fantastic and have like a lot of impact in those games, but I'm going to go for the information I have right now, which I feel like Elemental Shaman is going to have high impact, but not the most impact compared to the other specs above. And Enhancement Shaman, I'm going to shoot in my own foot, but I do feel like it's C tier in the enjoyment compartment for Soloq Rbgs. I know as an Enhancement Shaman, I'm going to have insane amount of fun because I do love the spec. Although it needs a lot of changes, although it needs a lot of help, I still enjoy the fantasy. But I know that in Soloq Rbgs, if I were like a DK or Demon Hunter or even a caster that are above Enhancement Shaman, I think I will have way more impact. Sometimes I see a comp and I say, oh god, they're going to just focus me and I'm not going to have too much impact. Because those games are just how it plays out. It is very slow into like really doing a lot of damage. You need to like start up a bit, you need to like warm up a bit, you need to do a lot of preparation, a lot of GCDs to be fair, to be able to like deal insane amount of damage, which often you don't really have the time for it. Everyone has a lot of CC, everyone has a lot of damage, so sometimes you have to choose between healing or damaging, and yeah, most likely you're going to heal yourself, which is resulting into a slower startup. But yeah, I think C tier is a fair thing. If I look at like very objectively, I think it is not a spec I can recommend to everyone. except for the ones that really like that spec because of the fantasy around it. Restoration Shaman is going to be interesting into the War Within, but a bit less than usually, so I'm going to put it in B tier. I think for me the deal breaker is the rework has been a success if you want to think in like a competitive sense, but removing Stormkeeper is such a L move, like it's really not fun. I'd like to be able to do lava burst into Stormkeeper, like destroying someone, and they would like literally be baffled about the damage I do. Right now it is like purely about healing. Your offensive capacities are not really as strong except for like the occasional lava surge and obviously the occasional like purge. You can just purge like interesting stuff which can help you winning the game. But I do feel like if it had Stormkeeper or a bit more of a offensive take, I would probably put it a bit higher in my tier list. Let's talk about DKs first because I feel like it's easier than Feral Druids. DKs are interesting because I feel like you can have a lot of fun in BGs like in general. It is a very slow spec. You do need a lot of healing to survive the damage, but I do feel like Frost Decay is going to be insane fun like in the War Within. I think your CC, your AoE damage, your capacities to just like make people ploof out of the screen, it is actually like very satisfying, and it has like, it is tied to balancing, but it is also not. It always has been like this for Frost Decay anyways. And I do feel like you would have a lot more fun in a Soloq Rbg environment than in arenas, and because you are like less of a target, you're not going to be stopped every single turn by a disarm. So I do feel like you have also a lot of impact with your AoE damage, and your spread damage is going to be very important as well. Unholy Decay, on the other hand, is a spec that I actually kind of fell out of love because of the newly designed spec. I think it has fun. If I have to compare it to the other specs, I do feel like the other specs have more things to give in those scenarios. I do feel like fun-wise, it is a bit lower. I think impact-wise, it is like still okay high. So that's why I'm going to put it in like Unholy Decay in B tier. But I think it is mostly me being biased because I do prefer Frost like in any way in general compared to Unholy Decay, the fantasy of it, but also the spells you can have and the animations of those spells. I do prefer Frost Decay in general. So that's probably why I do put it a bit higher in the design wise and the fun wise of the Soloq RPGs. Now, if I do talk about Feral Druid, I need to talk about the freedom you have as a Feral Druid. Now, the issue with Feral Druid is always going to be the same. It doesn't have a vanish. It's very tough to get a Cyclone out, especially at the start of the season, because you're going to run a lot of Mastery, but you're still not going to run Haste. I think in general you can have insane amount of games being very, very cool. But then you face the occasional like teams where you are like literally doing nothing. I'm going to still put it in A tier, but I like a really low A tier because I do feel like Feral Druid is still a spec that does play less interestingly than previous like classic iterations. So just for that, I do feel like it's still an A tier spec. And then we talk about Balanced Druid, which I think really uncontested, really. One of the best cast specs in Soloq RPGs, like environment. The design has been changed, and I think it's for the better. Same as Elemental Shaman, where it is a bit like hard to balance in Dragonflight, and now they kind of made it a bit interestingly to balance the spec into the positive or negative ways. But in general, I think Balanced Druid always has been like a staple spec in like BG environments, in RPG environments, and now also Soloq RPG environments. Your stealthiness, you can also be very mobile, you can also be very static and deal an insane amount of damage, or you can decide to AoE them down like PvE wise. You have a lot of ways that you can play your Balanced Druid as well, which I find it very entertaining. And then we can talk about Restoration Druid, which I find it also a B tier spec. I think it is fun to be stealthed. I think it's fun to be able to like multi-heal with AoE healing, with AoE like halting pretty much. But it is not as good as before with the design. I feel like the design is way more fun in 2v2, for example, because you can like really use those affinities. But I do feel like in Soloq Rbgs you have a lot more difficulties to make it shine because of the amount of damage that is like against you. Balancing wise, it could change. But I do feel like I would like to see a change to the mastery of the restoration druid being a bit less, a bit more flexible towards your healing, I would say. And now I'm going to talk about demon hunters first because they only have one spec. I think taking my bias aside, I don't really like demon hunter, the lore and whatnot. I know I'm like a alien to you guys, but I think having a high mobility spec, which does like in general high damage, has a lot of like tools to get away and to get back in. It is a high impact melee spec. I think no one can deny that demon hunters were rampant in Dragonflight. I think in the War Within it will be the same, but in general, I think demon hunters are going to be a very, very recommended spec if you're like new to the War Within or you're new to World of Warcraft. I think demon hunters are like one of the better specs to show you the ways of like PvP. Holy Paladin. I think I'm going to put it at a very low C tier. Why? Because first and foremost, your utility spells are very, very single target oriented. I feel like you're not able to deal any damage as well currently, even through the buffs and through the nerfs towards different playstyles. I think the hero taunts are like incredibly boring compared to other specs. I do feel also that they don't have a lot of high impact spells because of the obvious mythic plus problems. I think not being able to do melee like healing as well, like they had it before, is atrocious. It was way better whenever it was not split towards everyone, that it was just healing straight amounts to everyone would have been better. I know it was not really balanced, but it was at least usable. Right now it feels like playing like the different wings, like the melee wings, I would say. You would not have a lot of impact in those games, and the healing is very atrocious as well. So I'm going to put it in C tier. Mistweaver monks, I think I'm going to put it also a B tier for different reasons. It has multiple builds. You can play more of an offensive monk where you're just like fist weaving, or you can play more of a relaxed monk, which is like keeping everyone alive and very hard to down. In general, it always has been like a very good spec in the war, like in Soloq Rbgs, but also in just in BGs in general. So you will always feel appreciated by your team. I think your values and your cities and how you have your tools to CC is very valuable as well. So I think it is one of the specs that you can have a lot of fun going into the War Within. But personally, I'm a bit like taken back by how it plays, because it's never going to be my favorite healer at all. So it's very hard for me to put it in A tier or in S tier because of that fact. And then you have Retribution Paladin, which I forgot to cover, excuse me. Is going to be also a S tier spec. Has a lot of utility, has a lot of defensives, has a lot of like flavor. You can destroy people. I think the 2 hero taunts are very well made for Retribution Paladin. The spec trees has been changed a bit, which is fantastic because your damage is really high. Not because of the balancing, because I think the design is made that Retribution Paladin is going to be very much on the forefront in Soloq Rbgs. It's going to be very fun, and I look forward to play that. And then you have Windwalker, which is my... It's going to be very biased for me, but I think most fun-wise is going to be lowest on Windwalker. I genuinely never really liked Windwalkers in BGs. I do feel like you're very squishy, very hard to have fun. Like you play kind of like a warrior sometimes, so why not play a warrior kinda? I do feel like balancing wise it is like very strong. I think design wise and like valueness about like Soloq RPGs is not really high. I might just say, look, F it, I'm going to put it in C tier. Maybe I think it's a bit harsh to say like it's useless. You know what? I'm going to put it in B tier. I think B tier is like safe because it has defenses, it has mobility. You have Ring of Peace, which can help you to cap a node, not always though. You have mobility. You can play like a flag carrier on like BGs where there are no tanks. I think in general you can have fun because of the gameplay, although personally I don't like it. But I think it is one of the specs that are very like cleaving in general. Like some people like the spec and some people really detest it. I'm going to put it in B tier because I do feel like currently the spec is going to be performing in Soloq RPGs, not in the way that you would think though. And you don't have a D tier, to be fair. I do feel like also it would be a bit too harsh to put it a D tier, because I think you're like there's no spec that is utterly useless. Maybe like a tank that is not like very like friendly towards Soloq RPGs. I would say like protection or Paladin is not that great because of the balancing and how it's seen. It's seen as like a healer but counts as a tank in Soloq RPGs. So yeah, this is pretty much my tier list. I'll be losing my voice again because of the duration, but I do feel like I wanted to make a solo queue RPG fun tier list. People were waiting on it as well, and I do feel like if you want to choose a main, you could easily like watch one of those tier lists from me or from someone else to make yourself an opinion about a spec. Hopefully you did watch the whole video because it helps me as well as a content creator, because obviously ads, but also to understand why I made that video and how I made that video and why some specs are C, A, B or S tier, for example. So again, thank you for watching. Have a great day. Bye.